Hi guys, welcome back to Let's Talk About Stuff with Paul.
And Peter.
And today in this video or episode, as you can see, this is our What If series, a brand new series we're doing. But first, here's the intro music. Okay guys, like I said in the intro, today we're doing a What If. So Peter, would you like to elaborate and tell us what's scrolling along the bottom of the screen?
Yeah, so the what if is what if the USSR never fell?
So yes, we're
And
gonna
that's
get
pretty much
into a
what
bit
we
in depth. And if you didn't hear in the announcement video that went out today, which is Wednesday the 20th? No, 21st of July. At 12 o'clock, Great British time. You know, I like elaborating things. Yeah, we're doing a new What If series, and Peter did his research, and he's looked around other videos, and he's seen that this is kind of a unique one, because not many people do What If the USSR never fell. So, Peter, would you like to start us off?
So how I'd say that we're gonna do it by making the reforms that Gorbachev was trying to do. I think it was Persikovic. I can't pronounce Russian,
Russian names.
but pretty much it was a economic reform and political reform that was designed to reconstruct everything, really. And there, I'd say.
So, first of all, let's talk about how did the USSR actually fall?
Yeah, the USSR pretty much they tried to do reform, it failed. They broke into multiple states, Warsaw Pact disassembled, everything like that.
So,
Just to
say that reform never happened.
no, we're saying that the reform was different and successful because there were still economic problems and it would have fallen either way, even if the reform didn't happen. It would have fallen to famine and economic ruin.
Okay, so the reform went well. What happened? What would have happened in the reform?
Well, it was pretty much a reconstruction effort to reconstruct the entirety of the USSR and bring it back from the collapse.
So basically, collapsed buildings or whatever,
Yeah, no,
or
this is the collapse of the USSR.
imagine the USSR was a city. All the buildings in collapse, and the reformers then rebuilding it. In real life, in away from the what if, they tried to build the houses, but they built it out of sticks and straws, and they fell down again.
More specifically, they gave them pretty much they gave them more freedom and a bunch of other stuff, and then they decided to just
But in
do
our
away with
what if,
communism and rebel
yes,
because parts of them were like free speech and things like that, and there were other stuff.
yes, but in our what
And
if, we're saying that when they did the reform, instead of trying to rebuild the houses in this city, they obviously this didn't happen. This is a metaphor,
let
but
me just tell you this. I would like to say one thing. The reason why is because the reform didn't have enough time to take into effect. Because straight after they said the reform, or at the same time-ish, they said, "Oh yeah, you can speak about politically and anything. You can say anything about the government." And everyone was like, "Oh, our living conditions currently are terrible. We don't care that there's a reform, revolution, and everything like that."
okay, so this is like real life. This is what actually happened, yeah.
Yeah, it's along the lines.
So, what would have happened if that reform went differently? What do you think would have happened in that reform? I reckon they would have not given people freedom of speech.
Uh, I'd say what they would have done is they would have implemented, let's say they implemented the reform earlier to the freedom of speech and promised to give it later and just slowly build up to like the actual final thing of the reform and everything like that.
Yeah.
But not all at once because that was the main issue because everything was just given.
If you can't tell,
Uh,
Peter's a history geek. He loves like history and stuff. I mean, so do I. It's all right.
yeah, it was a long time since I looked at the Cold War, everything
He's
like
done
that.
his research.
No, not really.
Your brain is your research. But
Right.
anyway, so what what do you think would have happened with like the Cold War and prevent other things if the USSR had never fallen? Do you reckon it would have like carried on today, or
I would say that's sort of iffy. Let's go first for the Eastern Bloc, which is different to the USSR. So
okay?
the Eastern Bloc, I'd say, would still fall apart. I'd say Hungary would still leave the Eastern Bloc.
And the
Romania,
Eastern Bloc
Bulgaria,
is
pretty much the buffer zone. If you're doing Cold War, it's the buffer zone that
also satellite
USSR to
states.
stop the yes, Allied States. East Germany. So Germany would
The
still
people in
reunify,
the
and Poland would still
sphere of
come in.
people in the sphere of influence under the USSR. Yes,
Yeah, there was probably still breakaway and strengthen ties with like
and
USA
people
and
that
all
could
of
be
that.
in the Warsaw Pact.
And most likely with the West because they want to get funding to rebuild their stuff because they were pretty much exploited.
So basically, the easier way of saying what would have happened with the East, whatever you said, or the yeah, whatever. They
Along
they
the
they
same lines of
they've
modern day.
basically come out of the Warsaw Pact and gone to join NATO.
No, I'd say it will be along the same lines of what happened. I'd say it may have even happened quicker, and there might have been greater unity in Europe because there'll still be a powerful USSR. I'd say what they'll probably be doing is a similar type of communism to what China
Now,
is
question:
doing in the modern.
Is Russia part of Europe or is it part of Asia?
Russia is a part of Europe. It's debated really. Part of Russia is a part of Europe. Part of Russia is not a part of Europe. Everything's a part of practically Europe, Asia or Eurasia. Anything you want to say. But yeah, Russia.
So
I'd say
so
since the capital's in Europe, it's in Europe.
I reckon Russia would have split away from Europe, possibly, and they would have like made like a border around other
I
countries and
don't.
say, I declare this land as not Europe.
Like, here's the thing. I'd say they wouldn't do that. They probably want to be a part of Europe because in the modern day Russia, still supplies like nations like Germany with much of their natural gas reserves and other nations. So
Hmm.
they're less likely to critique them, and they'll probably use that influence and power to actually make people less likely to critique them. Now, if we go to communist China, and here's the thing, communist China and the Soviet Union were not on good terms. They were they had different brands of communism. They both
So
fought that same
did
one.
communist China and the USSR exist at the same time?
They did.
They did. And
Not it's a bunch
say
of
this still happened when if the USSR didn't fall, that would have caused possibly a massive war between two kind of
no.
big countries.
I'd say no because China still had the US, and all a bunch of stuff to worry about. Um,
Well, yes, no,
but for I'd say
but
whilst the reforms are going on,
because they're both communist, if they and they still hated the USA, would you say that would have
they were
that could have possibly caused another war between communism and capitalism?
there was practically never a total war, but because they had nukes, and that's the same, it was still played. Nukes will still be in effect. And also both the USSR and China were on not on the best terms. They could deal with each other because they had the USA to worry about and NATO and all of that other
But do
stuff.
you reckon if it got like too far with NATO and the USA, do you reckon the two communist parties would join together, try and figure out what's the best type of communism, and then
Definitely no.
worry about the other big things, like the
It's
USSA,
all a
the
system of
USA and
okay,
stuff.
yeah, it's all a system about politics and stuff. I don't think the leader of China at that time would want to be a part of the USSR. They'll still work together. In fact, the China and the USSR were not on the best of terms. There were disagreements, and China was sort of drifting towards the West and actually increasing friendly ties with the USA. Still weren't on the best of terms because ideological differences. But
Yeah.
again, the USSR, there'll be not really a big war. And in terms of the American view, they have just gained Germany, Hungary, Poland's independence from the USSR. So it'll be seen as a victory for them too. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be like a similar thing to the Marshall Plan given to them or an extension of it. because there'll be still the threat of communism, and this may disprove communism even more. So Russia will. Here's the biggest question: will Russia still be communist?
I don't know. It could move.
I'll
It.
say
What
they may
if
do.
what if the USSR went to capitalism, but
Oh, there's already been a video about that.
stayed the USSR, and they
That
didn't
that
split
that
away?
already happened. That already someone already made that, and they discussed it much better than we did.
Okay.
Anyway, what I'll say is we'll say that for some reason they do something similar to what China did, and that's set up special economic zones, which are pretty much capitalist but government controlled. So government controlled capitalism makes sense. They'll have similar systems to China if they were to stay politically stable.
Okay. So is there anything else you want
Eventually,
to add? Huh?
right, we'll add to the space race and arms spending.
Yeah. Did we want to
The
add that
fact
to this
is,
episode to like
yeah,
fatten it up?
we'll continue
Okay.
on with the space race.
So what if the space race hadn't?
No, no, no,
Oh,
no, no. No,
what?
I'm gonna say how the space race changed right now.
Okay.
So how
You
the
say how
space
it.
race, yeah, I'd say because there'll probably be collaboration between the USA because that was already and the USSR
That
of
happened.
satellites and space.
The space
Yeah,
link up happened.
yeah, but there might be future projects with like that, and there might be a new
Yeah,
international
like
space station.
so more
So they
space.
were really cooling down tensions because that's the reason why they went with the economic reforms because they had like these treaties on arms limitations and all of these things, and they felt like it was safe for them to do these treaties. And I'll say China would go along with them because it still hasn't. I don't know if yeah at this point it still hasn't risen to the economic powerhouse, and it will still rise to the economic powerhouse that is today.
What what would the effect on other countries be if the USSR hadn't fallen?
So the USA would probably be okay. Well, they'll start trying to make relationship better, but they'll still be not total best buds with the USSR and not actually too friendly with them. But they'll still like do like space link projects similar to that, and the space race might actually continue on for further.
Yeah, I mean, away from the what if,
Who knows?
what was Britain's relationship with the USSR?
Unfriendly.
Unfriendly, and what would you think it would be if they hadn't fallen?
I'd say still unfriendly.
Still
I'd
unfriendly,
say
but would there
here's the thing.
could there be like negotiations possibly
There
happening?
would be. Here's the thing. In the long term, whatever Britain does, Britain
Is
has
wrong.
the agreement with the USA to only use nukes if they were invaded, as not as a retaliatory start method.
Does Britain actually own nukes?
Yes,
We do.
Britain was one of the few countries that made the nukes.
Where are they?
The nuclear powers, I believe, are the USA, the Russia, that was the USSR.
Well,
China also has.
we own nukes in other countries.
Yes, no, we have got our own nukes in our country.
Where are they stored?
And there's also France. Now, here's the thing with France. France has a different nuclear doctrine to the USA and UK. That's why the USA and the UK didn't help France. So the France nuclear project costed probably more because, again, reasons. Because if this were to happen and the Russia were to invade, France would nuke Russia, Russia would nuke France, everyone else will attack and mutually destroy destruction will happen.
Hmm. Just
Uh,
a load of poo. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, we'll go back to let's say current day, 2021. I'd say there might be competition in space because Russia would still have
I
like
mean, look at Jeff Bezos. There's
no
probably
no 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 not just
there's probably a Russian version of if the USSR had never fallen, they'd probably like fight against him for some
that.
stupid reason. You know,
I'd say
just putting it out there.
it's the same thing. What does China doesn't fight against Jeff Bezos? They've got like their own alternative products. I don't know if Amazon's illegal in China or not.
Probably just
Which it
doesn't
might be, it might
exist.
not.
Jeff's probably too scared of them. I mean, come on.
No, it's because political reasons. They don't like private businesses. They want to control everything.
Uh,
What I'll
I
say
mean,
is
it's a
there
way to get money.
might be more competition for space. Like
If
I
China
don't mean
pays
like
Bezos,
private. No, I don't mean like enterprises like
Amazon.
SpaceX or Blue Origin or those space
Or
things competition.
Amazon.
I'd say like NASA. NASA funding might not be cut that much that it was in our time, especially if the USSR's, I think, what's the USSR space agency?
The USSR Space Agency. Hello?
Agency called. I think it was the same one.
Mhm.
I don't know. What if USSR space agency?
He's using Google, everyone.
Yeah, what was?
Oh, oh,
I think it's
oh.
actually it was the same one. But whatever the USSR space agency was, I think it was Rosmonauts. I do not know, but Rosmonauts or and then there is China's space agency. I've no clue what that is, and then NASA. I'd say NASA would probably still have their funding because China actually just started to land things on the moon, to go to Mars, and build their own space systems, and now has currently the largest telescope in the world, like radio telescope.
Nice.
So yeah, China is trying to get things into space. They're actually doing a new space race, which might be happening in the future. So the space race might continue, or might actually might make it so that if the USSR never fell, there'll be more funding towards NASA. So there might be like already a moon base or something, if that makes sense.
No. Yeah, that makes sense.
Again, yeah, all of this is determined by like how the USSR would have done and politics afterwards, and how everything would have been. Because there is still like I would say so the basic timeline is for the first couple of years after the reforms are put into place, they'll be more isolationist. That's when like influence would break, the Warsaw Pact would break up, and whilst they put the economic reforms into place, after the economic reforms, they may become the third largest economical superpower.
Okay.
I still think China will take over, and I'll still think as the second economic superpower. And I'll still think the USA would still be the first economic superpower because again, China has a really big population compared to Russia and more usable land
Yeah,
percentage. That makes sense.
it makes sense to me.
There may be competition between China and the USSR in this timeline, though. Because they're right next to each other, they might have to compete against like not only the USA, which is not as far away, but they might have to compete against each other.
Yeah, well, I mean, competing two communist countries competing against each other, it wouldn't work. Well, it could work. What
I
do you think?
mean, them like not like there might it won't be like a military competition, like influence competition, because what China's doing right now is using debt for other countries as a way of tracking them. Oh, and here's the most important thing: North Korea will be in a better position.
Okay, do you want to go into depth about
You
that?
know that would So at the past, there was North Korea was getting like funding from both China and the Russia, and there was some competition between them. So one of them they're both trying to one up each other to see who can give them the most amount of supplies to make them more loyal. Again, this links to that being not the best of friends. And if they were to continue doing that, if the USSR was still around, they could continue doing that. So most likely North Korea would be a better position that was today. Interesting tidbit of information.
Okay, so is North Korea communist or not? No,
North Korea it's technically yes, communist, but it's actually
it's a
socialism. I
dictatorship,
think
isn't it?
it's a dictatorship.
Yeah.
It's in a worse off position than most other nations, but in this one it will be in a better position because, and actually North Korea is a very isolationist country,
Mhm.
and I mean extremely.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah,
Once you're
North
in,
Korea
you're
I
not
would
out.
say would still be in a better position because China and the USSR
Would have their
would
problems
still
with each
be
other.
Well, more likely they'll still try and vie for influence over them. And the reason why China's still like supporting them to the point where they don't collapse is
Do
because,
Do you
well,
reckon if the
if
USSR
they collapse, South Korea will take over, and then there won't be a buffer state. Pretty much that's the thing. China wants a buffer state, which is North Korea, better than having a capitalist country that could like do undermine their thing.
Do you reckon if the
Yeah,
USSR had never fallen, that
continue.
the USSR would have like more satellite states, or there'd be more communist countries under the USSR,
If it hasn't had
would
fallen,
or would
I'd
there
say
be
no.
less?
Less, I'd say, because the Warsaw Pact would have fallen apart, and I'd say, was there the economic reforms are taking place, they would have become more isolationist. Not too much, but more like isolationist. They wouldn't really intervene with other nations' business,
Okay.
and there'll be probably political instability, so they don't want other nations to interfere with them.
Right, and as we're at this
Mm.
point, just for a minute, folks, we're just gonna take a quick break. We just need to hydrate and stuff, so we will be right with you.
And now it's time for the outro.
And we're back, and
Right.
I know he just said it's now time for the outro, but you know, it's fine. It's fine. It isn't time for the outro.
Yeah, yeah.
Nearly, but you know, we just needed to hydrate and talk about a couple of things. So, my throat is feeling much better.
Yep. So I will
He
add
says as he
something
coughs.
to it.
Carry on.
I'll finish off with saying that it depends on how the situation would have gone in politics. Again, things like this is hard to say, but general line is it will be communist Russia, bigger, stronger. There'll be more competition between the USA, USSR, and China because there'll still be something for the USA to go against. Because there was a time where there was really no one else to compete against the USA other than another friendly nation. Right. I will say the next what if is what if Britain went in an alliance, like this is a future what if. What if Britain is going to go in an alliance with Canada, New Zealand, and Australia?
So yes,
This could be a
guys,
possibility.
tune in for the next episode whenever it gets released for that what if. But for now, this is Paul and
And Peter,
signing off for
Peter,
now.
signing off.
Give me a second, I gotta check something. We're just having some tech complications. Peter, you talk about next week's thing on what's gonna happen.
So next week it's the scenario that's gonna happen is actually plausible. Like it could happen in the future. It depends on how the alliance goes.
Yes, so tune in next week, guys, for that what if. I hope you enjoy. This is Paul and Peter from Let's Talk About Stuff, signing off for now. Bye! Let's talk about stuff. We talk so you can listen.